Good afternoon. Welcome, and thank you for joining our session today. We have some exciting content to share with you. We're going to talk about Amazon Security Lake and how it can help you simplify your security operations and achieve better and faster security outcomes. My name is Jonathan Garzan, and I'm the product manager for the service. And I will be co-presenting today with my fellow colleague, Ross Warren, solution architect. And we have the pleasure to host today a customer that will be Troy Wilkerson, Global CISO of Interpublic Group, who will share his experience with us, with all of us. The agenda today, we will start with summarizing the challenges that you, CISO and security teams, are encountering as you're executing on your mission to secure your enterprise. We'll then talk about how Amazon Security Lake addresses those challenges and some updates since the preview launch that we had at re:Invent in November. And then the mighty Ross will come on stage and do a presentation, a demo of Security Lake so you can see it for yourself. Talk about how it works so you get a concrete deep dive understanding. And we'll then put everything to work with a session from Troy, who will go over IPG specific challenges and experience and collaboration with us on their project. We'll have then some parting thoughts and Q&A if we have time. Otherwise, I'll invite you to join us outside. And let's dive right in. So over the hundreds of customer conversations that we had with customers, with you, we are hearing over and over the same thing. And that's what triggered us to work on this project. They're telling us that enterprise-wide security data analysis is challenging. It's hard, it's always been hard, and it's becoming harder and harder. And so when we double-click and get into more details about what are the specific challenges, your responses comes in three topics, three themes. The first one that is highlighted here is the growing pain with handling the growing volume of data that you have to gather and analyze. Don't take me wrong, we all want more security signals. That's the bread and butter of how we do posture. We manage, we detect threats, we investigate events. But the volume of data over the past decade or 2 decades have become overwhelming. We used to be able to deal with gigabytes of data per month across the enterprise from your on-prem infrastructure, and with the advent of cloud and the better visibility that you're getting with modern applications architecture, more distributed architecture, with the explosion of endpoints and devices, the amount of entities that are generating those logs and the volume that they're generating has exploded. And now we're talking about terabytes of data per month, and some customers are actually having to deal with petabytes of data per month. And clearly, the solutions that have until now been used to analyze security data are not coping it with the ingest volume and the pace at which the data is growing. This is not just a problem of performance, it's also a problem of cost. Your data is scattered around in different security solutions, and you pay typically for storing them all around. And it's also a problem of access control. You have now sensitive data that is scattered around your organization, and it's hard to know who has access to what. So problem number one, growing volume of security data. The second problem is that it's not just a volume problem. It's not just that there is a lot of stuff. It's that each of these entities that are generating logs in a different language. They are heterogeneous in nature. They're not conform to any schema, any particular schema. And that means that it puts the burden on you, security teams, to either normalize that data yourself or build queries, write queries that can span across those different logs that speak different languages. And we know from the Babel Tower story that different languages is not the best way to collaborate. And so that's one problem. The burden is on you to deal with this heterogeneity. It's not just that, it's also the incompleteness of the data. We all love the agility of the cloud and the flexibility that it provides. You can spin up new accounts, new regions, you can spin up new workloads, but that has created new challenges for security teams, which is ensuring that you have coverage, you have visibility on your whole infrastructure. This is not a new problem. Shadow IT has always existed, but this is becoming, it happens now at an unprecedented pace. You can spin up these resources anytime. And so inconsistency and incomplete data is the second theme that we are recurringly hearing from customers, from you. The last challenge is, and it's a little bit of a consequence of the two first challenges, is that you don't own your data. The reason is that the only way to deal with the growing volume of data and inconsistency of this data is to typically shove all your logs into one or multiple security solutions that are going to deliver for you the security value. I say send all your data. It's not really the case. It's send all the data that you can afford, paying those solutions to host your logs. And this is typically a much smaller portion of what you would like to have visibility on. For example, you would typically not send network traffic flows. And so the problem is that you don't have more than typically 30 days or 60 days of retention in these solutions, and no way to investigate an event that happened 6 months ago. But there is another problem, which is that your data now is not in your possession. It's in the data store of these security solutions. You have to move this data to them, potentially multiple times, potentially paying multiple times. And the data is not really yours in the sense, it is stuck in their data store. And what it means is that it's isolated from the rest of the industry, from the rest of security solutions, from analytics that you could be using on this data. You cannot use the wave of innovation that happens in the analytics space because your data is stuck in their data store, and you're limited by their APIs, by limitation of these data stores. If you want to run, for example, machine learning algorithms to do fraud detection on your data, and you run a Spark job or a SageMaker notebook, or build a model, you cannot do that because the data is not in your account. It's somewhere else. If you want to use large language models that is trendy, you cannot do that because the data is not available for that. So these are the three challenges that we have heard recurringly from you, from customers. And when we ask, when we're brainstorming with our customers about on what they would want, they're telling us that it's pretty simple. They want a solution that easily centralize all their data across the enterprise and normalize that into one place so they can have visibility on. They want help in retention management and cost management of the data across the enterprise. And they want, above all, the freedom to choose which analytics they run on their data and combine and try out multiple ones without being stuck with one or the few that they have chosen. And so our customers have not stayed put facing those challenges, and you haven't. Many of you have started. This looks like good requirements for a data lake. And many of you have started building your own data lakes. And it's pretty easy to get started. It's pretty easy to get a few data sources in. But suddenly you realize that you need to deal with the volume of data. You need to build collection pipelines to start ETLing that data. You need to build scripts to enumerate the constantly changing resources and footprint across your cloud providers, across on-prem. And you start pouring more and more effort, energy, and budget into this data wrangling problem, into this data engineering problem that detracts you from your mission to secure the enterprise. This is really what we've heard. This is the state at which we've started Security Lake as a project, a state where our customers were asking us to help in solving this security data management challenge so they can spend their time more efficiently on their job of securing their enterprise. And so and nobody wants to look like this person on the screen. And we don't want you to feel like that. So when we started this journey and looking at working backward from this requirement and goals, you customer, you ask us to advocate on your behalf. We started looking first at the data uniformity problem, the lack of data uniformity, which is a big first foundational blocker to owning and choosing how you use your data. And we started advocating on your behalf and talking to many security vendors in the industry and talking about these problems that you were telling us about. And it was actually a very easy conversation because each of these vendors, we're talking about SIEM solutions and network and firewall vendors, endpoint vendors, were all hearing the same thing from their customers, and sometimes we're all living through this pain. Their engineering team were living through this pain as well because they also need to provide any security value to do all this collection and normalization of data. So it was pretty easy to gather a group of industry leaders, and it turns out that Splunk had some intellectual property around a schema that they had acquired. They had obtained through an acquisition, and they were happy to open source completely this framework as a basis of a new open source standard, if that was to help the overall industry. And so that's what we did. What we did is that at Black Hat 2022, we co-launched with 16 others security vendors, in addition to Splunk and ourselves, OCSF, Open Cyber Security Schema Framework, which is an open source project which aims at crowdsourcing this problem and crowdsourcing the solution to this problem of data uniformity by bringing together security vendors, customers, and other partners to agree on a common language for security, so that entities that emit logs can emit it in this OCSF format, schema, and readers, analytics providers can seamlessly read this data and provide security value across silos, across different sources. The traction that we had has been so far formidable, amazing. We had 18 initial participants launching the project. At reInvent, we announced 60 participants, unique organizations that are contributing or participating to the discussions. And we have now over 130 participating organizations as of last week. And this community is ever growing, and it's not, again, security vendors, it's also companies from across the range of verticals, including education, government, SaaS. It's really not a vendor-led initiative, but it's an industry overall-led initiative. So we launched that as a foundational step. And the second thing we did to address those challenges, deliver on this vision of what customer wanted, is announce Amazon Security Lake. We announced Security Lake in preview at reInvent 2022, and now we have announced the general availability on May 30, so about 2 weeks ago. And Security Lake is a turnkey service from AWS that help you build and manage a security data lake that provide centralization of your data automatically across AWS logs, but also other cloud providers, on-prem, SaaS services. And this service, by a few clicks, by going through a few clicks, automatically optimize all your data, so it's efficient to query and to store for long term, and normalize all your data into a schema, which is OCSF. So all the data in Security Lake, after a few clicks, is aggregated, cataloged, and ready to query by either your AWS analytics solutions like OpenSearch and Neptune and QuickSight, but also by a number of partners with which we worked to provide you with integrations that provide you with this freedom of choice of analytics. The traction has been amazing as well with the number of partners and integrations that we got. We had announced 37 direct integrations with security vendors and system integrator at reInvent. We have now more than 60 across the range of security vendors and solutions, including identity management, EDR, SIEM, etc., a network firewall. And so really this is bringing together the industry to help simplify this data management problem and helping you focus on your mission. The traction has been great and amazing from the partner adoption, from our customers' enthusiasm, but also from the industry as a whole. And the press and analyst response has been also very positive. And you see on the right, for example, Amazon Security Lake being featured at a recent cybersecurity event given by Gartner as validating their vision of a cybersecurity mesh architecture. Basically, Amazon Security Lake delivering on that vision, which is a vision of a modern cybersecurity platform that is composable and open, and really, like Security Lake brings this to the table. And now to get into more details about how it works and give you a demo so you can see it for yourself, I'm invited Rod Wallace.
Rod
Ross Warren on stage.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. And I don't know why he started calling me Mighty Ross, and then he just couldn't get my name right. All right, how does Amazon Security Lake work? We're just going to kind of a really quick overview, just so you kind of understand and bring those concepts that Jonathan just talked about into focus a little bit. At the central heart of Security Lake is S3. We're putting the data in S3. We're coordinating a lot of those rules and policies and pipelines that Jonathan talked about. And all that data in S3 is in OCSF and the Open Cybersecurity Schema framework. Those buckets, they're your buckets. The data's not sitting off somewhere else. They're customer-owned buckets, which is very, very important. I think that was one of Jonathan's points, right? The customers wanted to own their data. As we bring data, oops, that was a back. As we're bringing data into Security Lake, whether it's an AWS log and we're running those pipelines, whether it's some of those partner icons that Jonathan just had on the screen a minute ago, or you're bringing your own data, we are building up and making sure it's in OCSF. We're building up glue tables. We're taking care of lake formation permissions. You can then, if you wanted to, pivot easily to Athena. We know some SOC folks love Athena. Some SOC folks don't ever want to look at Athena. And so it is just a way, actually during preview, a lot of my customers went immediately to Athena and said, okay, great, my data's there. Now what do I want to do with it? So that's the left side, bringing the data into Security Lake. And then how do we consume the data? We talk about the subscribers and the control of who has access to the data. You'll see through my demo that I can say that my SIEM is only going to get these kinds of logs. That's been very, very different in the past. Historically, if you've got a data lake, you've got a role, pretty much everybody has access or some form of star access to those logs in the S3 bucket. My SIEM can consume everything. We're controlling that. We're letting the data custodian of Security Lake have that ability to turn off logs, enable logs based on what the SIEM or the solution can actually do. All right, so this is a recorded demo, and so I'll try to remember what I clicked on throughout the demo, and so if I trip up a little bit. But what I'm going to show you is we're going to walk through setting up a brand new Security Lake. I'm going to walk through the optionality we have for configuring things, and then how easy it is to actually bring VPC flow across hundreds of accounts, across 100 VPCs with a very few button clicks. And then we'll pivot to a security lake that's actually all set up. And I'll kind of walk through a demo of just some of those options about a source, subscriber, roll-up regions, and we'll walk through those. And then after that, I'll show you some examples of visualization. Lots of customers are asking, great, you've got the data in Security Lake, what am I doing with it? Security Lake is not a SIEM replacement, but I want to show you some examples of that visualizations that have actually been announced and released at GA in some GitHub repos. So cross your fingers. Let's see if I can remember what I clicked on. And timings. So we're going to dive right into Security Lake console, brand new Security Lake. By default, I have all log sources, I have all regions, and I have all accounts on. I'm going to walk through a little bit here and show you that if I just wanted specific AWS log sources in there, I have that optionality to go select them. And these are just the logs that we have now for AWS at GA. There'll be more and more coming. And I think I say to myself, let's just use all logs for this demo. Great. Also regions. You may be only in certain regions, and so you could enable all regions, or you might want to walk through and just enable certain regions. For this quick little demo, I'm just going to do some US regions so that I can show you roll-up in just a second. And additionally, the best value is doing it across all of the accounts in your org, or you could pivot to and maybe just do a couple accounts that are specific to things you're trying to collect. So next, we're going to actually do a roll-up region. We're going to say, for example, all my US regions, I want to put them in US East 1, so that when I'm doing queries, when I'm doing subscribers, I only have to go to one region to actually do that. And I just walk through bringing everything to Virginia for this setup. We also abstract away a little bit the S3 console. If you're used to doing lifecycle policies in S3, I'm letting the data custodian configure that right here. I just picked Glacier Instant Retrieval as a simple example, but you could do multiple tiers just like you do in the S3 console. Last part of this is I'm just going to verify all my settings and everything. And through the magic of recorded demos, I'm going to hit create and flip over to the Security Lake console that's already been configured. A little bit different setup. I've got some regions configured. I've got 2 roll-ups versus just the 1. And we're going to take a look at sources. The sources button is AWS logs. And so let's just pretend that I want to now enable VPC flow logs in a Security Lake that's already been set up. Maybe I didn't do that before in a proof of concept. And I'm just going to do it in one region for right now as an example. Because maybe that is a brand new region that come on board. Maybe I started moving more workloads to that region. And so I'm just going to configure flow for that region. And then subscribers. Those are the consumers of the data. And so a whole bunch of stuff in my demo environment. We're going to create a subscriber. I need the name of the subscriber. Something fun, demo subscriber. And then I need what logs I'm going to collect. Remember, I said the data custodian can have control. And so I think I'm just doing 1 or 2 log sources for this demo subscriber. You could do all of them. In the back end, I'm making policies and rules that only allow that subscriber to have access. I need an AWS account number, where I'm actually sending the data to or writing the policy for. And I need an external ID, that unique identifier for that tenant. A couple different ways, but I'm going to set up an SQSQ so that subscriber gets a notification, and then they can ingest that data based on that SQSQ. I'm not going to click on the create because it's a fake account ID, so it would error out on me. And I can now see, let's see all my regions. So an example of actually enabling another region. If you see I've got one region that hasn't been enabled yet. I can now select, hey, what log sources that I actually want in that region for all accounts that are there. Same thing, I can specify all accounts or only certain accounts in that brand new region. And actually, I will click this button and show you I can now also define that new region, and then maybe I want to do a target roll-up based on this certain region that I just made. And we slowly click through that. And I'm going to ignore storage class here for right now. So I'm going to now click, and I'm creating that new region. I'm turning on all those logs that I selected, and for any of the accounts that are actually in that region. Security Lake nicely tells me everything's green. And what do we do next? Oh, custom sources. So any of those partners or any of your own ETL is going to be a custom source right now. But it's just as easy as the subscriber. I give it a name. I pick what OCSF class is coming in there, DNS activity, network activity. Same thing. Give it the account ID, where the data is coming from, and I give it that unique external ID string. Again, it's a fake account ID, so I will not click create in just a second. I thought I sped that up, sorry. It's better than trying to do it live. Oh, and last thing, we can, click on it, Ross. We can look at all the accounts across our whole organization in any region, what we have configured nice and easily. I can see I've got one source there, I've got 6 sources there, if you can actually read it on the screen. And just a quick visualization of what I've actually got there. And I just was showing you, I got some roll-up regions there. All right, visualization examples. Lots of people will ask for OpenSearch and my integration. Very, very soon I'm going to have a bunch of integration coming out. But right now, what you're going to see is findings. So I got a Security Hub findings dashboard that allows me to drill down and look at my volume of Security Hub findings. Right, Security Hub findings is one of those sources that I can bring into Security Lake. You can tell I'm generating data because it's very periodic. Another cool dashboard is network traffic, right? VPC flow, NetFlow, all those things would be rolled up into the OCSF class for network traffic. And so I've got some really nice visuals here. So I could see by volume, per account, per region, and I could, if I wanted to, because OpenSearch lets me nicely, filter on some of those other things down the bottom of that sort of top 10 dashboard. Oh, I was showing you different accounts there. So account level network activity. Maybe I'm really focused on a specific account and what they are doing. That may be part of my investigation. I saw some alert somewhere else, or I want to come in here. So I'm going to go pick on an account specifically and just see that my dashboard and my fake generated data looks beautiful in those peaks and valleys. And again, I can do a whole bunch more searching. These are really just dashboards out of the box. You can go play with them, use them as the base of some more investigations. And then API activity, right? Everybody wants the search CloudTrail. Everybody wants to know what API calls are actually being made in regions and accounts and what services that are being doing. So there's a really nice drill down dashboard here for me to look at. That was a get object, right? S3 get object, I want to know who's maybe pulling some data out of my buckets. QuickSight, another easy, serverless, nice deploy, one CloudFormation template, and I've got some really nice, detailed dashboards. And thinking about different personas, I've got a data lake executive, I've got a data lake custodian, and maybe I've got an operator. And I'm able to look down at my traffic flows. I'm able to see what my accounts are actually connected to by IP address. And, you know, I can't read my screen. Oh, and what host names, maybe there's some queries going on for some of those API calls. I'm going to drill down into a specific Security Lake API call, which is create custom log source. Just seeing if anybody in was trying to actually create a custom log source. Just highlighting a Security Lake API call. So I talked about those different personas. I'm looking at like a Security Lake executive now. They want to see the findings by region. They want to see what records are actually happening. And then maybe the data custodian wants to know what actually OCSF classes are actually coming in. Am I seeing spikes? How does it relate to all of the other sources that are actually coming in? So as Jonathan said, data is coming into Security Lake, and I'm now giving you some examples of things you can use to do analytics on top of that data, OCSF data that's sitting in Security Lake. AWS services, you saw a whole bunch of icons on that slide that can provide analytics, or bring your own. And so that was the end of my demo. I'd like to invite Troy Wilkerson, Global CISO of IPG, up to the stage now.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ross. I'm not sure how this
I'm not
works.
going to step off the stage that way.
Yeah, there's a short drop there. You want to do that. So, and I took some notes here. I'm going to stand over in this corner a little bit because I want to make sure not to leave anything out. So important what we're here to talk about today. So, unlike Jonathan and Ross, I'm not deep in the weeds on the technical bits on how to turn it on or how to configure it or how to optimize it. But I do love Security Lake, and that's why I'm here today to talk to you about what Interpublic Group has done with Security Lake so far and what we're going to do, hopefully, in the near future. Maybe that's a back. I don't know what that one is. Yeah, let's go.
Just go forward. Yeah, there.
All right, so who is IPG or Interpublic Group? We're a global provider of marketing services for people all over the world. We made some of the Super Bowl commercials you saw this year, but we do a lot more than create commercials. We have data as a service. We do a lot of marketing, advertising, brand building, representation, and we're in over 100 countries. And what that means, and what this slide really should say, is that we thrive in complexity. And we have a very complex network that is both hybrid, on-premise, in the cloud, SaaS, and you name it, we have it. So, that's just a highlight here for IPG. My team definitely is looking for bigger and better ways to handle our security data and security approach to threat detection and response. And so, that's why this is an exciting time to be here at AWS. So some of the business challenges that we were looking at, and if you look back at a few years ago, my peers, other CISOs, we talk about how do we leverage the security data that we have coming at us? How do we make more efficient searches? How do we, bring in the data we want to bring in, but also be able to action it? Because at the end of the day, the reason we're collecting these logs is so that we can find bad guys doing bad things. And that's a challenge because, as Jonathan said earlier, we have to choose what logs to bring in because it's expensive. And in legacy SIEM market, bringing in more logs just either costs more money or you just don't do it. So you have to decide what's right for my environment, what do I want to bring in, what's going to give me the best analytics. And so that's a huge challenge. Another challenge is what he mentioned about OCSF, which we love, is the common normalization format of this data that's going into the Security Lake is something that we've never seen before. So I have a staff of folks who are data scientists who have to normalize the data coming into our SIEM, have to write transforms and all those translations for what an IP address is in this log versus what an IP address is in that log. We have to make sure that when we're doing our threat searches, that we're looking across an IP address means the same thing in all of our log sources. It's not easy. It sounds easy. It's not easy. And you can miss things. In fact, we find all the time that we have to go back and check our homework and that we might miss things when we're looking for threats, especially 0 days that are out there. These things come on us pretty quickly. It's a 0 day for a reason, hits the world hard, and you got to go search for it in your logs, and then you try to correlate it across all these different telemetry, and it's not easy. So having it in a common schema is so important to us, and I really think that was the bedrock for making a security data lake a success. Definitely writing detection logic across these multiple sources is a challenge. So if you imagine trying to write a correlation search across different logs that say different things in different languages, it's very difficult. And so you miss things. And that could be a threat actor who's trying to move laterally inside your environment. That could be an external attack, brute force or something like that you're trying to decide, is this a real attack or is this normal traffic? If your query is written in such a way that can't look across a data set that is wide and disparate, then you're in trouble. So this is very important to us. And I do have some points here, so apologies for looking at my notes, but I'll make sure that we catch all these points here. So what was our journey with Security Lake? So it was announced back at reInvent. We decided to be a very early adopter. We tried to become a launch partner for this product because we saw the benefits of this. The industry as a whole is looking at what we call XDR. If you're familiar with security, you understand there was EDR, now there's XDR, and that word means a lot of things to a lot of people. But at the end of the day, it's about bringing all of your logs and telemetry into a single place so that you can do analytics on top of it. And there's a lot of promise of XDR out there. In fact, at RSA this year, it was on every bus and every building, and you would see it everywhere. But what does it mean, really? XDR is actually what data lake is doing, and that is bringing your telemetry into an agnostic data lake. So it's not vendor specific. There's a lot of companies out there who either are building a SIEM solution in their product, or they have acquired a company to wrap SIEM into their product. And so they're trying to convince you to put your logs, all of your telemetry, into a point solution. Well, that's great, and you can do all your analytics there, but what happens when you have a reason to change vendors and you want to go to someone else? Then you have to either port your data, lose your data, or not be able to action anything older than a certain date. Not a good outcome. So we deployed Security Lake within our log archive account, which included all of our 35 Amazon accounts for operational efficiencies. We began by bringing in the Amazon native logs, so that includes the VPC flows, which are so important, the Route 53 DNS resolver findings, the Security Hub findings, as well as other logs that are not on this list. But being able to move quickly with a few clicks of a button to get that data in, that was helpful. We were also looking to bring in third party. Wiz was our first because Wiz had built out their integration to Security Lake. We were hoping to get a couple more third party sources into Security Lake during preview, but the vendors we use have not gotten there yet. You'll see that on the next slide. So then once we had not just Amazon data and third party data in the lake, we moved over to configuring our roll-up regions, which is super important for us so that this data is in one place. We can do the queries against the common data lake. So we rolled this up into US East 2 for our purposes. And then that led us to be able to do the queries with Athena and OpenSearch across this data, which is just the beginning for us doing analytics, because what is the purpose of putting your data in one place if you can't have that abstraction layer of threat hunting and threat correlation? So that's what's important to us. And that process was very quick, very easy. What our engineers loved is that Amazon did all the work. They didn't have to go out and create a data lake and an S3 bucket and all the connections for this. It just came together with a few clicks of the button that Ross showed you earlier. So what about the business outcomes? What are we trying to get to? So some of you in here may be engineers, you may be security leaders, you might be security operators. For us, the business outcomes are very simple. How do we find bad guys faster? How do we get our data in one place that we can improve our searches and we can find things in our data that we hadn't been able to before? Data science is the future of security operations. So if your team doesn't include a data scientist, you should look into that. But it's definitely a part of the future. And as we look at Security Lake, what we're able to do is easily bring data in. What we found was it was super simple to bring this data in, not just the third-party data and the Amazon data, but also our on-premise data for custom apps that we built. And that's important. If anybody in here is a Splunk user or an administrator, you can understand how hard it is sometimes to create firewall rules to allow data to flow into universal collector for legacy SIEM. Not the same here. It's very easy. Push button, get data. I like that. That was one of the easy parts. And then, of course, OCSF has solved that issue of normalization. I want to call that out again because it's a challenge. The data is now coming in a normalized way so that the data lake is structured in such a way you can search across all of your telemetry with a simple query that does not miss these fields. But my hope, and I was talking about this earlier during the presentation, is my hope is that I'm going to be able to bring in logs that I hadn't been able to bring in before. Legacy SIEM is expensive, and ingest is the paramount for that cost. And so there's logs that CISOs have to decide, I can't bring that in. I can't store that. I can't keep it for longer than the next number of days. Data Lake gives me the optionality to own my data and decide how long I keep it, but there's no cost to bring in third-party data, so there's no ingest fee for me. So that means my providers for firewall, endpoint, antivirus, all these tools, API data into our S3 bucket, I'm only paying for storage. And I get to decide which tier of storage I use and how long I keep it, which is important because the average dwell time of an attacker during a breach is about 180 days. That's 6 months, averaged by the Ponymont IBM Institute. And so if your EDR tool is cutting off your data retention of full telemetry at 30 days, which is normal, then you have this massive gap in visibility. But with Data Lake, you can bring all that telemetry in, and I mean full telemetry. Most EDRs allow you to keep alert data for a longer period of time, but that alert data is just that. It doesn't give you that full telemetry of hashes and all the application calls and all the things that happen on the back end that you guys know more than I do. But it doesn't allow you to keep all that granular detail. So this is going to give us the ability to do that. Budgetary constraints. I think everybody in here is dealing with this economy. I know that it's hit my peers hard as well as myself, and really not from a perspective of, we're having a hard time finding money. It's about how do we do more with less? How do we become more efficient with the tools that we already have? How do we empower our teams to do better things? And bringing more data in is certainly going to allow that to happen. So that's another big, big win. And so I want to move on to the what's next for IPG. So we've got this data lake. It's put into place. We're now in GA. This top bullet was last week. We actually pivoted on Friday to GA. It took forever. I think about 14 and a half minutes or so. It was great. Pushed two buttons, 3 buttons. It was flawless, and it was simple. And the best part about it was we didn't lose any data. All of our preview data, all of our POC data from the early days was there. We were able to cross-correlate that with what is now production data. It was seamless, and our engineers were shocked at how easy that was. But then, again, all this back-end work, all of the engineering, all the smart people in this room who know how this happens, the next part's the most important part. How do we action the data? How do we get insights from the data that we're collecting? And so that's where I believe really the next generation of this is going to be. And so hopefully by the time Black Hat comes in August, we'll be talking about some real life use cases of finding threat actors and legacy threats using Security Lake, because I think that's where we're going from that perspective. The open search dashboards that Ross showed you are just the beginning. We're working with companies who are already building upon Security Lake for that abstraction layer of threat correlation and threat hunting. Companies like Tago Cyber, companies like Hunters. These companies realize the value of what this really means. And this is the future of log correlation, log analytics, and log storage for security. And so we hope to have some future integrations very soon. The word future here, I hope, is next week. So, that's not future like down the road. We're talking about, we are hoping to get data in as we speak. So, the number one for me, our largest log source is our firewall logs. So as you can imagine, if we're able to bring those firewall logs into Security Lake and really apply those analytics that we want to, imagine how much money I could save on the legacy SIEM cost by not ingesting that full telemetry there. And in fact, we'll get more telemetry, such as your traffic logs, your flow logs, your NetFlow, SFlow, and all the other things that you wanted to see all this time that you just couldn't afford to bring in because it's too voluminous, right? That's exciting. And then, of course, your Azure Audit. I don't know if anybody here is a Microsoft shop. Azure Audit and Azure Active Directory are probably some of the biggest logs that you'll see, but they're the most important. They're user identity. They're your cross-correlation of impossible traveler. They're some of the best places to find lateral movement and people passing the hash and all that stuff that happens between computers and authentication. And so being able to bring that into Security Lake and be able to search it in real time at speed and at scale to find bad guys doing bad things, it's going to reduce our time to detection, reduce our time to remediation, and it's going to make our company safer. Then, of course, moving on to Proofpoint. Email logs, they're our biggest threat. I think 85% was the last number I heard of breaches that come from email. They still do it. And with the help of ChatGPT, I think these phishing emails are getting better. So we have to be faster and better ourselves. And so what I like in this too is comparing Google to ChatGPT, right? So Google, you put in a query, it's going to give you pages and pages and pages of results that you have to filter through and find the answer. Whereas ChatGPT just gives you the answer. And that's what I feel like the difference between legacy SIEM versus Amazon Security Lake. The answer's right there for you. So, with that, I will turn it back over to Ross. Thank you for your time. Or Jonathan Esim.
That will be Jonathan, but that's fine. We do that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Troy, for your testimony. Really great to see Security Lake at work. I need the clicker, which is here. And definitely looking forward for continuing our collaboration and deliver what you expect next week and on a broader time scale as well. So I have a few wrap-up slides. One of them is what we've changed since preview, between preview and GA. So we introduced a number of changes based on feedback and operational experience. We added 6 new regions. So we launched preview with 7 regions. We added 6 new regions, including San Francisco, London, Singapore, and so on. We'll keep adding more as fast as we can, with the goal to provide global coverage. We added options for you to better control your usage. And going forward, this is going to be like a theme of our roadmap and something important. We know that ultimately what you want is to get the most out of your budgets. And so we are going to work with you, providing ways, more optionality, so that you can collect what matters and optimize the value of what you collect. Specifically, we had in preview CloudTrail being one source that was CloudTrail management, CloudTrail data event, and CloudTrail Lambda function execution activity. And we've broken down this source in 3 sources. So now you can select individually whether you want to collect data events in a particular region and particular account. You have that more choice now. We also made a lot of ease of use improvements. If you've used the preview version, you had to create a few IAM roles that were for services to communicate within your account. You don't have to do that anymore. Basically, you don't have to create any role. The console does that for you. You can still do it if you want more control, but we have assistance on creating those roles. We also released an AWS managed policy. So if you want to create a role that just has the administrator permission, data lake administrator permission that you want to give to your data custodian, you can do that very easily without having to fetch yourself the permissions or being an admin. We also made a lot of ease of use improvement on the data sources themselves, with improvement in the mapping we're doing to OCSF, and also evolution. We kept up with the evolution of OCSF. So we also upgraded our log sources between preview and GA to match the latest changes of OCSF, and we'll continue to do that. We really want to keep up with OCSF, and we'll continue to do that. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to say before wrapping up is that it's easier than ever to get started. So that's also we've done a lot of work at GA to make it easy for you to get started. So most of the visualizations that Ross showed you earlier are now available on GitHub. So AWS samples. You have SageMaker notebooks that we did not see that allow you to run some machine learning model or get started. These are basically examples to get started with QuickSight. SageMaker will release very soon the open search code. Basically, this is to help you if you want to DIY some of these analytics. You have the choice to do that or use commercial solution, but you can do that easily and provide us with feedback and tell us what you think and what you want to improve. We also released a few blogs, and one of them is explaining how you can build your own ingestion pipeline for the sources that we are not natively yet supporting. They can be AWS or outside AWS sources. For example, audit logs from other cloud providers. So this blog tells you how you can step-by-step build a pipeline to do that. And we have the GitHub code as well that is published on GitHub, open source code. We also worked closely with our professional services team. So it's easier to get started. So we have now an assessment service, Security Lake assessment service provided by Security Lake that is a two-week workshop that helps you get started with Security Lake. Our PS professional services team can also help you migrating historical data. If you want to start in Security Lake from a base of a few months or years of data and transfer your existing data from somewhere else, or just build also a pipeline to import your custom data. So our professional services team can help you, assist you in getting started as well. And this is a summary. The summary is that we hope we convinced you that we have worked hard to remove what we called here at AWS the undifferentiated heavy lifting that is part of everybody's job. That does not, basically is the time you're spending on things that do not deliver directly outcomes for you. And in the security analytics space, it's really the data management aspect, the nitty-gritty, getting the data, building, indexing things, and building pipeline. And so we are removing completely that from you so you can focus on your mission. And if we talk about cost, we also priced the service to allow you to collect as much logs as possible, all your logs. And for that, a few things. We are only charging, Security Lake is only charging you when you ingest AWS logs that we ETL. So these are the 6 log sources that Ross shown earlier. You are not getting charged anything if you bring your own data to Security Lake. Basically, you're bringing your own data into Security Lake managed S3 buckets. We index that data. So it's put under Security Lake management, meaning that you manage the retention of the data, you manage the access control of the data, share it with whoever you want, but you're not getting charged any penny by Security Lake. And the same applies for using your data. This is also very novel. The data is in your account. If you use your data, you are not getting charged for it outside of reading S3, using Athena if you do, but this is not something that Security Lake is in the mix and is taxing you for in any ways. All right, and that's the conclusion slide, and we'll wrap up and do a quick Q&A. I would say in conclusion that we constantly say at AWS internally that security is job 0 for us, and we know that it's job 0 for you as well. We hope that we have convinced you that we are working hard to make security operations easier for you and give you the choice of the analytics tool that you choose. Importantly, we don't see Security Lake or OCSF as like a one company project at all. This is not an AWS project. This is the beginning of an industry transformation and a movement that we are starting. That we have started not by ourselves, but with many other vendors. Again, recognized by industry analysts, and this is really what we're just at the beginning of our journey, and that's really what we want this journey to be. And so we invite you to join. You can join OCSF, ocsf.io, and participate in the conversations around normalization. You can also try out for yourself Security Lake. It's GA, it's available in 13 regions, and something that I did not mention is that it is free for the first 15 days. For each new account that you enable, the data is free for 15 days. So really, I invite you to try it. If you use this QR code, you'll get directly to the product page. I thank you for your attention very much. The one last thing that I would ask is that if you would fill out the survey form that we have in your application. This is really important for us. We really value your feedback and we'll improve whether it's good or bad. So thank you very much.